Notification saying it started any second. Great, yeah, we're recording. So hi and welcome to this Global EdTech Academy session. Today with me, Mark Anderson, as part of the Global EdTech Academy in association with Q and Microsoft. My name is Mark Anderson, and in this session, I'm going to be sort of sharing ways in which we can be more productive as educators using Microsoft 365 tools. I've got a presentation which I'm going to run through, and you may have some questions during that. I'll jump back into Teams during the session to see if there's any questions in Teams. So if you do have any questions, please do just pop them into the chat, and I'll be able to deal with those and respond to those as I see them. I have built in a little bit of time at the end of the session as well in order for me to deal with those questions as well. So if it's getting to sort of 10 to the hour, then please note that I've built in some time to do those sort of things. Don't worry, don't panic. It's not a red alert situation. So I'm just going to jump into sharing my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see this a-okay. I hope this is the right presentation. In fact, I'm just going to do this because it's often works out to be the best route forward. So hopefully you can now see my full screen. And there's my presentation there, top 10 productivity tips for Microsoft 365 for educators. Just going to run it into slideshow mode here. So as I said, welcome, my name is Mark Anderson. I'm a former teacher, middle leader, school governor, and a bit like a trustee if you're in a multi-academy trust. I've got a long career spanning many decades in education. I now work with schools, supporting them with lots of different things, all to do with teaching and learning and technology, from leadership, digital strategy, all those sort of things. You can follow me on Twitter if you're not already, at ICT Evangelist. And Chris, please do connect on Twitter, and Jason and anyone else. It'd be lovely to hear back from you after the session. I always share, I don't do drive-by sessions, so if there's something from this session that you've seen and it gets to be after the session's finished and you've got a question, please do feel free to get in touch after the fact and drop me a line at ICT Evangelist. Alternatively, my website is ictevangelist.com. And if you're not a Twitter person, then there is a contact form on the site, and you can get in touch that way if you want to. We're using the Microsoft Edu Getter and WeAreQ hashtags as well. Please do check those out on Twitter if you are a Twitter user. There are 30+ different educators from all around the world sharing as part of the Global EdTech Academy. And there's a huge offer of training there available to you, from Ken Shelton to Naomi Harm to Matt Miller to Kathy Kuzhnowski to Paul Langley-Watkins. There are many, many, many of us sharing great things about how we can best use technology to support learning and teaching. So please do check those out, and you can do that very easily through that address you can see there, q.org/Microsoft. In fact, it's the route that you came through to join me in this session. So if you do go to that URL, you'll see there's plenty more available today. In fact, there's more sessions running throughout the course of today, with Matt Miller and Naomi Harms doing a session later. Loads and loads of things going on each and every day, and all of them are recorded and shared back onto YouTube after the fact. So you're very welcome to visit the YouTube channel. I shared the link to that just before we started recording in the chat here in Teams, and you can access all of that amazing training, 400 hours plus of opportunities there for you to sort of learn from and share with colleagues. There's plenty there to be checking out. So you can get to all the sessions, as I said, through q.org/Microsoft. There are new sessions on every single day. And what Microsoft and Q have done is try to work out a whole plethora of sessions across a broad, I mean, the Microsoft 365 offer is huge, from using things such as Flipgrid, so OneNote class notebook, to PowerPoint, to all sorts of stuff. So you can access all the training through there. And if you want to find the playlist, the URL that I shared in the chat is different to the URL there, but they will both take you through to the same place. If you go to q.org/getterrecording, that will take you through to where you can find the full playlist with all of the different sort of pre-recorded videos from the live sessions, such as the one that I'm running with you now. So that's what's available to you there. As I say, you can follow me on Twitter at ICT Evangelist. My contact details are on the screen there as well. ictevangelist.com/contact. You can get in touch with me on the address there if you want to, if you're not a Twitter person. And as I say, please do check out those hashtags beyond the scope of the getter. In fact, if you look at WeAreQ and Microsoft Edu, there are loads of great shares every single day, often every single minute, such as the popularity of these hashtags from educators, MIE experts, all sorts of people interested in the positive uses of technology in education. And a big shout out actually to Slidesmania. Slidesmania.com, who provided the templates for these amazing Global EdTech Academy slide decks. I think you'll agree they look awesome, and there's loads of great free different templates available from Slidesmania for you to support you in your use of PowerPoint. PowerPoint's an amazing tool, but again, trying to save teachers time, being more productive, which is part of what this session's about actually. Accessing sort of resources such as that can help you with your work. Anything you can sort of do to speed up and save you time is always going to be of benefit. So please do check out slidesmania.com. Big shout out to the team there for their support. So I'm going to be sharing some productivity tips for Microsoft 365 in this session today. We're going to look at some of the productivity tools that are available, some of the opportunities that are there. We're going to think about ways in which we can use them, and then there's some time at the end for us to sort of ask, or you to ask some questions, and for me to have a go at trying to answer them for you as well. Thing is, productivity can be thought about on lots of different ways, shapes, levels, and these sorts of things. It can be on a personal level. How can you yourself be more productive? It could be, how can you make your team more productive? You know, I was talking with a friend and colleague just yesterday, who's been using Microsoft Planner. He's been really keen. It's a very email heavy culture in the school, and he's trying to make things more streamlined, more focused with decent workflows. And they're going to map things out across the course of the year using Microsoft Planner. A great way of doing it. And as I often share with schools and teachers, when it comes to using technology, you know, it isn't so much what you do, it's the way that you do it, in a Bananarama style. So please, you know, think carefully, because, you know, Word you can use in a really productive way. You can use it to do all sorts of things. But if you check out my Twitter timeline, you know, I put out a tweet this morning. It's very easy to use EdTech in ways which can be really creative. Lots of unintended consequences can be gained from using technology in simple and creative ways. So I just shared a little starter for 10 sort of thing, a little question. And it's 9 options in a little 3x3 grid. And the responses I got from it have been huge from sharing that this morning. But that's not an amazing use of technology. It's not all bells and whistles. It's nothing, you know, really spectacular. But the creativity behind the activity is what has actually, you know, really stemmed the great responses and things. So please be mindful that whilst technology can do loads and loads of things for you, it's often your thinking behind how you choose to use that technology which can actually help to make the big difference. Sometimes, actually, it's not the technology that can be the problem with getting people being really productive. Sometimes it's not the chair, it's sometimes something between the chair and the computer. And having worked with, you know, thousands of hundreds of thousands of educators over the years, having the right mindset about how you approach using technology is often the key to your success. And so I'd always strongly suggest you know, explaining that to colleagues, having the mindset. I think, yeah, and you know, I was presenting just the other day actually, another event, and you know, some people who presented didn't get things quite right. They went to share their screen, it didn't work. And some of the if we had like a buzzword bingo for remote learning this year, it would often include things like, can you see me, can you hear me, you need to turn your microphone off, those sort of things. Things don't always go to plan. when it comes to using technology. But having the right sort of mindset and approach to that can make all the difference. And so with a sort of middle leader sort of hat on, it's important to, or a senior leader hat on, when you're trying to interact and engage with colleagues and supporting moving them forward, it's often important to reflect upon not necessarily their competence in using the technology, because I mess things up using technology all the time. I can be presenting on a stage in front of a whole load of people, and things go wrong. Sometimes the Wi-Fi falls down. Sometimes the connection to the projector goes, or the projector bulb blows. I've had that before. I was working at a school in Dubai, and we were all set up and getting ready to start to present and share to the 200 or so teachers at the event. And just as we're about to go, the projector bulb blows. And what do? Well, you don't just run away and never use technology again. These things happen. So what do you do when these things happen? So thinking about how confident people are, and then thinking about how you can support them through these different stages, and maybe ask your colleagues where they think they're at on this journey. And are they in a survival mode? Are they scared of breaking it? These sorts of people will need to be really sort of supported and scaffolded. And so if you can be sharing back some of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you about how to be more productive with Microsoft technology today, maybe don't sort of start with the level 3 or 4 sort of things. Chris, who's down in Taunton, who's looking to get some ideas for sharing with people in his training, he think carefully, Chris, about where your audience are at. Maybe do a little poll and using Microsoft Forms beforehand, or a nice little one that I do, which I think you might like, is to create a blank Excel spreadsheet and ask people to rag rate a cell in this shared Excel spreadsheet. Rag means to color a cell, or ragging means to color something in red, amber, or green, depending on how they feel about a certain thing. So how are you feeling today? Green means A-OK, amber means I could do better, red means I need coffee, whatever it is you choose to do. But you can always ask people to sort of go into the spreadsheet and rate their confidence in using technology. Red, I'm scared out of my mind. Amber, I feel I'm okay. Green, I think I should be on stage with you. That sort of thing, perhaps. Sketch note here, created based on some work that I did by Sylvia Duckworth, works through the 4 sort of stages of teacher confidence. So somebody here at the bottom not very confident at the survival phase. It might be that you might have someone who's actually had some training, is starting to feel a bit more confident at a mastery phase there. Someone who's really quite confident using tech and understanding how and when to use it, and is confident in doing that in their classroom. And then maybe someone who's a bit like Chris, who's innovating and using technology all the time, who's already very digitally literate. They're innovating and sharing those kinds of things. And in fact, people often ask me how I've made do this with this with this sketch note to move around like this. That's actually a very simple thing to do. And it really links well to cognitive load and lots of other sort of things in cognitive science theory. But all I've done is I've actually got the original sketch note here, and I've duplicated. I've pressed, and here's another little productivity tip. Rather than doing Control and C, Control and V, you can use Control and D. I'll just do it now for you. Control and D will duplicate. So you can see I've now got 2 of these, and all I've done is I have then increased the size of this on the slide, as you can see on slides 10, 11, 12, 13, and then on 14 I've gone back to the original size. And all I've done, I'll just remove that one that I've duplicated there. All I've actually done is I've highlighted all of these, and on the transitions, okay, you can see now I've chosen the morph option. And what morph does is it moves things on the previous slide to their new locations on the current slide. Okay, so what you can do is simply then pan around and zoom in on the key parts of any diagram that you might want to share. So I could have had this on the screen and just talk my way through it, maybe use the mouse pointer option to point at these different things like so, but it's far more impactful and effective, and I think it looks pretty good as well, just to pan around. And this is a great way of making not only your presentations really, really pop when you're delivering them like I am right now, but to really draw your viewers into the things that you want to be working on. And if you're working with your learners in the classroom and going through some quite complex things as well, you don't want to give the whole game away. It could be, rather than using a whole image like this, you could actually just apply some animations to things that you're explaining. Often, and I've discussed this in other sessions, if you want to explain something, let's say with a teaching frame of reference, the feedback loop, you wouldn't have the whole feedback loop thing on screen and discuss it all in one go. You'd introduce each stage that you want them to be thinking about. If you're doing a math problem, for example, you wouldn't have the question and the working out and the answer all on the screen at the same time. If you were working without technology, just on a plain whiteboard, you'd be writing those things as you work on them with your students. You'd be pulling their feedback into you as you're actually answering the questions. So using the technology you've got available to you through a stylus, if you've got a touchscreen Microsoft device, and doing it that way. And again, you can do all of that within PowerPoint, which is a great way of using technology in simple but effective ways. But having a pedagogy-first approach to all these things, I feel, is, and I've always felt, is really, really important, because there's some amazing things you can do with technology. You know, I can go into Paint 3D, I can design a 3D object, a 3D model. I can view it in 3D space. I can bring it across from Paint 3D by just copying it and then bringing it to PowerPoint and then pasting it. And from there, I can then manipulate it and bring it into my presentation. I can discuss it. But just because you can do these amazing things with technology doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And so having this pedagogy first approach to things is really, really important. Equally, though, when it comes to being productive using technology, it's important to think about how, not just how you can use these the technologies to support your teaching and their learning, but also how they can make you more efficient, so you can speed up processes in the work that you're doing. And when you're supporting colleagues, this is about feedback, and this is a quote from Ron Berger's superb book, An Ethic of Excellence. It's about recognizing people's accomplishments when they actually achieve something. And, you know, let's say for argument's sake, we've got two people, Jane and Amjad. Okay, now Jane is really, really competent in using technology. Amjad really, really isn't. And the things that you might say sort of well done to and give compliments to, you might see those things more often with Amjad, because he will have more frequent accomplishments. What is an accomplishment for Amjad might not be necessarily a big accomplishment for Jane. And so think carefully about how you interact with your colleagues when you're training them, or if you're supporting your students with their work in the class. Think about how you're going to give them self-esteem. It's not by going well done every 5 minutes, but recognizing and celebrating things they actually accomplish, which are relevant to them, rather than just saying well done all of the time when it isn't something really. Interact with your colleagues and also your learners when you're dealing with sort of supporting them with these sorts of activities. When it comes to being productive, as written in the guide to creating a digital strategy that I shared with you, I mentioned to you earlier, being mindful and consistently applying approaches, and not just in your classes, but in all classes inside your organization. Using the tools you have available to you can improve your efficiency and productivity, and obviously then can help reduce your workload too. And so again, a bit of an analysis of where the skills and confidences and competencies are of teachers in your organization can really help to sort of be strategic in how you map out these things. Now, Chris said beforehand he works with schools on their strategies and these sorts of things. Well, again, undertaking a bit of an analysis of where the school is at, maybe asking teachers to become Microsoft innovative educators by completing the same course available through the Microsoft educator community to benchmark skill levels in the school might be a great way of actually ensuring things and approaches are consistent within the school. Once you've got that level playing field, when you know where everyone is at a base level, the lowest sort of common denominator for everybody, then you can build upon that once you know where you're all at. Spending a lot of time focusing on your top 10 keyboard shortcuts, for example, like Control and D that I shared with you before. Okay, that's great, but making sure that everyone is happy at doing those sort of things is really good. But there's no point in having that sort of approach in your school if everyone in your school is already a keyboard shortcut power user. So think carefully again about how you frame it so these consistent approaches can have the biggest impact for you and your colleagues. And I've got 5 areas, 5 things for you to make sure that you really consider when it comes to either on a personal level or either on a department level or even on a whole school level for you to consider ways in which you can be more productive using Microsoft 365. The first of which is thinking about the things that you can do that can be time saving. So something that saved an awful lot of time for me when I was working in schools full time was when I was working on policy documents, for example. 20 years ago, that might have been 15 years ago, perhaps, that might have been a case of opening up Word, starting on that document and calling it version 1. I would then email it to colleagues and they'd ping it back, and they'd have a version from somebody else and a version from somebody else and a version from somebody else. Well, that's not very time saving. So I've then got 5 different versions of the same thing, and I've got to search through and find out which one's which and who's added what and where the differences are and all those sort of things. Even with track changes turned on, that's not the best use of anyone's time. And so, again, lots of people use Microsoft 365 still in that kind of a way. Why not try instead then and thinking about ways in which you can save time in doing those things? And I'll consider those sorts of approaches in just a moment. Think carefully too about how you communicate. Is email absolutely required and necessary? How many times do I work with schools and they have an email system where they've set up groups for email communication, which is a really good way to do things, for example, of certainly saving time. If I'm the head of science and I want to email all my team, typing the short name for team science, let's say it is team science, typing team science is far easier than typing out the names of all 17 people in my department. But rather than doing that, lots of schools have like a staff all group. How many times have I worked in the schools? How many times have you got? Have you worked in the school? Have you got this in your school? A staff all email group, and somebody, rather than actually targeting the email to the person it needs to go to or the people that the email needs to go to, just being lazy and typing staff all. If that just takes up 10 seconds time of 100 people who don't need to see it, multiply that, then somebody replies to it, multiply that by the 100 again. How much time is being wasted? Think carefully about how you communicate. That can make you far more productive. And whilst we're on that topic as well, I know my phone, because my phone does buzz and go off with notifications an awful lot. But right now you have my singular attention because I'm not wasting time looking at those things. I'm going to be really productive. And when I finish this session with you today, I'm going to go to my phone and I will go through the notifications and deal with them in one go, rather than being reactive and being proactive about how I manage my notifications and the things I have to deal with. There was a great blog on the Microsoft blog, for example, from this wasn't an education thing, so this was a business thing. But on the blog, they talk about actually having, really focused time during the day and having a specific block of time to be productive at responding to emails. So rather than reacting to emails as and when they come in, or notifications for other things, as and when they come in Teams or whatever, have a specific point in time in the day where they actually go in, deal with those things. Think carefully not only how you communicate, okay, to make you more productive, but also how you react to communications that come in and involve you. And think carefully about collaboration. That goes really nicely into that first example I was sharing. Way back when we'd have emails pinging through, we'd have policy version 5.2.1 final, and then final. Have you ever had one of those with the word final written 3 times in the file name? I know I certainly have. if you're working in a collaborative way, Word Online, Excel Online, these are all superb tools, PowerPoint Online, for you to collaborate on different resources, documents, policies, plans, rubrics, all these things with colleagues, and it saves you the time of having to ping backwards and forwards, forwards and backwards, lots of different versions, and certainly will evade that need to have version 7 final 2 being pinged around and things. Collaborate in really simple ways using the online cloud tools. Help yourself achieve targets as well. Outlook, way back when started out as an email client, but there's so many things you can do in there now in regards to reminders, in terms of laying things out using the calendar. You can use the scheduling assistant to help you sort of block in your meeting times and find out when people are free and when they're not. Share your calendar with other people, for example. Have an open calendar so people can see when you're free and when you're not free, when you can fit in the time to do stuff and have a meeting and so forth and so on. Be really proactive about those things. The work you do before the event will help you be more productive after the event. Excuse me for just knocking my keyboard down. And finally, hopefully these things, if you're considering all of them, will end up with you having to do less work. And by that, what I mean is often we actually generate extra work through our approaches. If we're more sort of thoughtful and mindful about how we approach our work, actually we can reduce the amount of work we have to do. We often generate more work by having these different versions flying around, for example. So again, being more productive is often not so much about the technology, it's often about how we, as the person between the computer and the chair, actually approach all these different things. And if you've got a senior leader or a middle leader hat on, we need to model these things for our colleagues so that they can get in and on board with those different things. If you're like my friend who wants to improve workflows within his department and across his school, use the tools that are available to you to model that. So, for example, use OneNote Staff Notebook to really map out very clearly what it is you're going to be doing through that year. Don't have things in lots of different places here, there and everywhere. Use the tools that are available by having a shared space in OneDrive, for example. Bring those resources through into your staff notebook, into your content library. Have collaborative spaces. I used to save myself oodles of time around meetings with my teams when I was a senior leader and a middle leader. I would often have to run my own meetings, set up my own agenda, all those things. But I would use cloud tools. I would use online versions of Word to share the agenda before the actual meeting with my colleagues. My colleagues could then feed into the agenda before the meeting even actually started. Often, we'd have covered actually most of the points that we would be discussing in the meeting before the meeting actually took place. On occasion, it actually meant we didn't even have to meet because everything had been covered. All the reading I needed to share with colleagues or the discussions we wanted to have had actually already happened in our collaborative space. And so by that happening, I could then actually say to my colleagues, hey, we've actually covered everything. We don't need the meeting. The agenda became the minutes from that meeting. And so we were then able to go away and use our time more productively and effectively because of the way that we had used our Microsoft 365 setup. So things to consider further then with how you can save time. Scheduling, okay, rather than I work quite late in the evening as a person. I'm not really a morning person too much. That's why I enjoy my coffee so much. Use that as an opportunity to have a little sip. Thank you. But I'd write my emails 10, 11. When my children had gone to bed, I'd be there working. And I would be, writing my emails, but I don't want my colleagues to be receiving emails at 11:30 at night. And so I'd schedule those emails to go out at a reasonable time the next morning. Very easy to do that in Outlook. And actually, who wants to be sending emails to their colleagues that, if they have got notifications on their phone, you don't want to be pinging them at 11:30 at night. Now, you can't control what colleagues do around their notifications on their various devices. You can't control that. But what you can control is when they receive them. And so doing some simple things like scheduling your emails in Outlook so that they go out when you want them to go out is a great way of doing things. Keyboard shortcuts as well are massively helpful. And there are loads and loads out there. I mean, I shared the Control and D one earlier, but there are loads that we can use. Control and W, for example, for bringing up your screen capture, all sorts of stuff. Think about the activities that you do regularly, and then apply them in the way that you're working. Rather than having to go to the trackpad, use the Shift key and arrow key to highlight a letter at a time, or Control and Shift and arrow to jump a letter at a time, or Control, Alt, Shift and arrow to jump whole paragraphs. Use the down arrow and Shift, Control, Shift and down, for example, to highlight a whole paragraph at a time as you're going through. And then, I can highlight a whole paragraph and change the font size, Control, Shift, P, and then make it bold, Control, B, all sorts of stuff without ever needing to go to any of the elements of a ribbon, without having to use the mouse trackpad, all sorts of stuff. Now, these things won't in and of themselves save you loads and loads of time each time at the one time that you do it. It'll save you a microsecond, but the cumulative, the aggregated gains in time, and that's that marginal gains approach that David Brailsford took with Team GB in the Olympics. It's not one little thing, but when you aggregate all those little tweaks and improvements you can make, when you add them all together, you do end up saving loads and loads of time. And so thinking carefully about how you aggregate those little micro wins together can have a huge impact and a big difference on your collective efficacy. Use the focused inbox option again, for example, in Outlook. It'll help you. It's the clutter feature which has been upgraded, but use that to help you keep your mind focused on what it is that you need to do, or even have your Outlook off. Have it not open and available to you, and you have your little email slot, let's call it. The thing before you go home, end of the school day. That little half an hour you spend there, for example. Again, treat it in a personal way. If you've got opportunities to share how you do things that work, do that. And have a consistent approach across your team and discuss what works for all of you and share those ideas back. And also, rather than attaching files individually to emails, attach them directly from OneDrive or SharePoint. Okay, so you can bring your files across without having to leave OneDrive. If you've got a collaborative Word document, don't download it to your local drive and then attach it to your email to then send to a colleague. Actually attach it direct from OneDrive or SharePoint so that people can access that, or students can access that directly from the actual location. So any changes they make or any tweaks that they make to that file, they're actually working on the file that you had available to you in the first place, and it's all being done in that one same location. And then the final thing is to think about templates. If you're asking lots of your team members to do things consistently, let's say you want every lesson for your teachers to be sharing learning outcomes at the beginning of a lesson, why not have a department template which has that slide in place beforehand? Even if you're just saving colleagues the microseconds it takes to create a new slide in PowerPoint and type the word outcomes, add those up together over the course of an academic year, and you could save half an hour for each person, for example, just from doing that one simple thing. And keep those templates in a shared space, or have them added into your template chooser in PowerPoint across all of your devices. Just think, again, it's about thinking, where can I save some time? Where can we make a micro improvement? How can we be more effective with what it is that we're doing with our use of technology? And these, again, when you add them all together, can make all the difference. Something else which is super powerful as well is PowerPoint Designer. Okay, so when you're working in PowerPoint, use the designer tools. Put in the simple sort of text that you want to appear on your slide, and then use the PowerPoint Designer to suggest layouts for you to make things clearer for you delivering and easier to read and engage with from your students' perspective. Other ways that you can improve your communication as well, there's loads of ways in which we can do this, but using Teams, for example, you can actually mention people. You can actually do that with inside Outlook, inside your emails as well, which will notify colleagues that need to actually get involved and say something and respond specifically when you're actually sending that email. I mentioned the use of Starfall, please avoid it. There are times when the head teacher or principal of your school might need to email all members of staff, okay? But maybe have it set so that only the principal or the head teacher can actually do that. Don't make it available to absolutely everybody. There really is no need. And if it is important for a message to go out for absolutely everybody, perhaps make it a setup in your school so that you have to run that past the principal first. It is a big ask of everyone's time to involve them in this level of whole school communication. Some schools, my youngest son goes to a school, there are only 8 members of staff, so it's not a big deal, but there are not many schools that are that kind of size. Okay, so just think carefully about how you approach all of that. You can also set emails using Outlook. You can actually choose to ignore emails. Okay, so if you have got a staff hall email comes in, it isn't really relevant to you. You can choose to ignore it. So if any sort of parlay starts going backwards and forwards with people replying to that email, you can actually choose to ignore it in a similar way to which you can maybe ignore conversations on Twitter or other social media by using the mute function. You can choose to ignore those emails. One of my best time savers is to use dictation on your device as well. Cortana is really, really clever, really, really good. And so I dictate loads and loads. Now, I can type quite quickly, but even being able to type quite quickly, I cannot type as quickly as my device can pick up and put things in from my voice. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, and it starts off even worse than perfect because it takes time to get recognized to your voice, used to hearing your voice and understanding your intonation and all those sort of things. But over time, it becomes much, much better. And yes, some proofreading will be involved, but I would suggest that if you're writing a block of text, or even if it's just a quick, bit of feedback response, use dictation. It will make you so much more efficient. And the more you do it, the easier it will become and the more efficient you'll be through its use. And another one really is similar, friends, is just recording your voice. Again, you can say so much more than you can actually type, even if you are using dictation. So if you're leaving some feedback, for example, in OneNote class notebook, a student has submitted some work to you and you want to give them some feedback, record your voice and place the audio clip next to the relevant point. You could even do some screen recording, record your voice, draw on the screen, do your feedback and so forth and so on, and send that back to the students. It's a really great way of being not only efficient and effective, but students actually prefer, in the feedback I've read from the Education Endowment Foundation, students engage more with feedback when they can hear their teacher's voice and see it at the same time. And then attaching things via a link rather than actually attaching the physical file means that by using that link, and that's similar to how I mentioned in the previous list about sharing files directly from OneDrive or SharePoint. Easy, simple approaches. Nothing groundbreaking here, I'm afraid. Sorry, Chris, but great ways to make collective efficacy super important. There are loads of ways we can be more efficient and productive through collaboration as well. You can obviously share the live documents like I've mentioned a moment ago. You can use documents in the cloud. We can create shared folders. Rather than having a folder which you own, okay, and every time you put a file into it, having to actually then share each file individually, why not have just like your science team folder, share that with the whole science team, and anytime you then put a file into that particular folder, it will automatically then be shared with everyone who's got access to that particular folder. And a great way of a great side benefit of all these things is that you can make sure that everything you do in the cloud is always automatically saved. Additionally, and you're going to see the whole list now, but so you've also got autosave up here. I don't know if you, hopefully you can see that, but you can turn autosave on at the top here, and you can choose where it's saved to and all these different things. Okay, so it has to be linked to being saved in the cloud already, but you can turn autosave on super easily there. Let's jump back into the presentation as well. Again, a second. So I've already mentioned these things. You can see all these options now actually before I make it full screen, but you can use Microsoft Planner and really map out how you're going to achieve and what you're aiming to achieve and by when with your colleagues, and it links into all of your different Microsoft 365 accounts. So it's really powerful in that way. Share your calendar, I mentioned that earlier. And be consistent in how you apply your time saving and efficiency methods, and work in a smart way, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and in a target focused and time related way. So there are ways we can work less as well. We can save time. We've seen this more and more, obviously, in the past 6 months with remote learning and us all working from home because of the pandemic. But now, just because you might be going back to school in a few weeks, do you still need to move from your classroom to go, the 500 meters to the other side of school to meet? What can we not still actually just have our meetings in Teams like we have been previously? And why not think about doing things like I'm doing now, which is recording this session? Okay, so if you want to sort of share your minutes back at the end of the session with any member of SLT, you could always record this. It automatically will save the meeting virtually that you've had to Microsoft Stream. And then it's very easy to then share that with anybody else who wants to see it as well, being open, transparent, and efficient in the way that you do it. Dictate, as we've said already, share that calendar and Outlook, but make use of Microsoft Stream, because Microsoft Stream not only does those things that I've said now, it's also creating, and have a look at this yourself when you go to stream.microsoft.com for anything that you've recorded in Stream. It now not only does the recording of the video and the audio, it even creates a transcript now of all of those things. And if you've got if you're doing this with learners, for example, this is also a great way of making it far more accessible, because that transcript can then be translated using the translation tools built into Microsoft 365 to make that accessible to all of your ESOL learners as well. There's so much you can do, and I'm mindful that I'm about to go into the Q&A point of this meeting, so I'm just going to wrap up with these final few tips. One thing that has been super helpful for me is in Word, you can just get a PDF. As a teacher, for example, sort of creating past paper exams, that sort of thing, or taking information and repurposing it into different handbooks and so forth and so on. Getting the text from a PDF into Word has always been traditionally really, really difficult. You can now really easily just drag a PDF directly into Word, and Word will attempt to turn that into an editable document for you. So have a go at doing that yourself. It's super easy. Just have Word open, have your PDF over here, drag it onto Word. You can go file and open and do it that way if you want to, but I just drag and drop them straight into Word, and Word will attempt to convert that into an editable document for you. So it's a great way of repurposing documents that we need to use as teachers. Another thing that's super helpful as well, if you've got a camera enabled Windows device, such as a Surface like I'm using here now, if you've got a table of data, say as a middle leader, I was always being given my line manager was forever giving me documents that were tables of data. I was like, oh, crikey, have you got it digitally? Oh, no, sorry, I haven't got it available. Oh, great, cheers, thanks. And so I'd then be no need to do that anymore. Simply load the camera in Excel, photograph a table, and Excel will convert that photograph into tabulated data straight into an Excel spreadsheet. So again, just little things that you can do within the ecosystem, which is super helpful to help you with the work that you do. Office Lens is really powerful as well. It's built into OneNote and is available as a standalone app, not only in the Windows App Store, but on iOS and on the Chrome Store as well. It's got immersive reader built in as well. You can change the font, the color, it does all the immersive reader stuff. And Office Lens is really powerful as well, not only for capturing documents, but it's also really helpful as a teacher in the classroom to use as a visualizer. If a student's done a piece of work, simply snap it using Office Lens or as Office Lens within OneNote Class Notebook. And once it's in Office Lens, you can then use Office Lens as a visualizer. You can annotate it, you can write all over it, you can type onto it. And when you've finished with the document that you've been working on up in Office Lens, there are loads of sharing possibilities afterwards as well. You can send the snaps that you've made, for example, into a PowerPoint file. You can turn those snaps into a multi-page PDF or into a Word document, or share it to a specific location in a OneNote Class Notebook that you've got. And you can go drill right down into a space within a content library that you want those things to actually be saved into. Office Lens is epic and one of my favorites little tools to have as part of my toolkit from Microsoft 365. It really is awesome. But any tools that have got immersive reader in are superb, and even Edge now has great immersive reader opportunities in there to improve accessibility, not just for you, but also for those people in your classroom that you work with. I use immersive reader and Edge myself. For example, I often work in my kitchen, and so I'll have my device and I'll have a web page that I found, but I don't want to sit and read it. I've got things to be doing. I've got my children have asked me to make them a sandwich or whatever. Well, I can just use immersive reader I just click it in, press the play button, and I can have my Surface just read the web page to me. I don't need to use immersive reader because of any additional learning need that I've got, but actually I can be multitasking and doing different things through using this really, really simple tool as well. So being productive doesn't necessarily mean about using tools for their intended outcomes. Sometimes, as I said right from the outset, it's about using these things for unintended outcomes. And again, keyboard shortcuts are my absolute key takeaway. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds for every single Microsoft tool that's out there. So please do get in and dig deep. Controlling K, for example, is a useful shortcut that I use an awful lot. Controlling K just brings up the hyperlink option. I have to often create hyperdocs and link up different things in resources I'm making and all this sort of stuff. So just by highlighting the words, let's say I was just here and I wanted to highlight Microsoft 365. My cursor's here. I'll press Control, Shift, and arrow to highlight Microsoft 365. I'll press Control and K to open up the hyperlink dialog. I'll type in the URL, I'll press Enter, and then it's boom, hyperlinked. So it's simple things, and again, it takes time to do all these things. If you're busy jotting down notes of all these different things you want to try and bring in with all your colleagues as well, don't try and do them all at the same time. Think carefully about where your colleagues are at on that journey about teacher confidence and competence that we talked about right at the beginning, and try and tailor your improvements and tips and things that in ways which are relevant and timely for those people who are in your team, and have these smart meetings. Share your documents, your agenda before the meeting in an online space. Have them feed forward before the meeting. Let's see if we can do that, and have these mindful and consistently applied approaches using the tools you have available to you. You can read, I'm not going to read that to you, but hopefully these ideas and approaches make sense to you so that you can be more productive in the ways in which you work within your classroom, within your department, within your school, within your district. And if colleagues say to you, but I can't do technology, well, of course you can. Remember, self-esteem comes from accomplishments, not compliments. Support people at the level that they need to be supported at, and give them those opportunities and scaffold those wins at a level which is relevant and helpful and supportive to them. So I hope you found that useful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to jump back in and see if any of you have any questions for me. But thank you for the opportunity to come through and join me for this session today. I see we've got a few extra people joined us since the start. So thank you to Chris and Jason. We talked a bit earlier. We've got Ashleen and Peter Jones. I'm not sure if that's my friend Pete Jones from Jersey, but if it's not, that's fine. Anyone called Peter Jones is welcome in these sessions. Thank you so much. Were there any questions anybody had about any of the things that I've mentioned and commented on during the course of this session today? And while you're typing away, to say, Chris, yeah, I completely agree. Office Lens is absolutely awesome. That gets a big heart from me. It's a staple of my workflow. It is absolutely brilliant. Great stuff, Jason. Thank you so much for the feedback there. If you do have any questions beyond the session today, Jason, like I said, I don't mind you getting in touch afterwards. I don't do drive-by sessions, as I call them. So please do feel free to get in touch, and be lovely if you have any comments as well. about the session, please do share those on Twitter and things too. Audio feedback stuff, Chris, is just, yeah, there's loads to go through, isn't there, Jason? The audio feedback thing is so quick and easy, particularly within the OneNote class notebook stuff, Chris. You could even do it directly on top of slides in PowerPoint, and it's really accessible as well. I remember the first time I did a screen recording, it was for a student of mine. I was teaching A-level computing, and he'd sent me like it was his A-level coursework for A-level computing. There's like 30 sides of A4, loads of code in there as well. And it was just so helpful to him as a dyslexic student to have audio feedback, but I screen recorded and wrote stuff down. Brilliant. Oh, thank you for the comment there, Peter. Really, really good. Got some more comments coming through now. I'll deal with these sort of one by one. The audio feedback and recording your screen is super useful, really, really accessible. And the addition, Jason and Chris, of being able to put this into stream where you can now get the transcript from what is being said as well is absolutely superb. In fact, and forgive me, I don't know how to turn this on, but you can actually have live transcript, live subtitles inside Microsoft Teams now. It was Teams was updated, and I'm not quite sure where the option's gone to now. But there is an option somewhere in Teams for you to have live transcription there as well. So that's absolutely brilliant, I think, for accessibility and that, because obviously that can be translated into target languages for ESOL learners and things as well. Office Lens is ace, Peter. And the drag and drop stuff, the Excel thing, when you've got like whole class data, it is epic. It saves so much time. And then before, you can be doing the bit when you're given data to analyze. The job is the analysis, isn't it? You'll spend more time typing in and then checking you put the right numbers in and things. That'll take you longer than the actual analysis. What you want with the tech is for the tech to really sort of disappear, so you can actually focus on the activity you want to be doing. So that's a really amazing thing to do with Excel. Jumping into Ashleen's comments, and it is Pete Jones from Jersey. Awesome, buddy. Thank you for coming in and joining the session. Ashleen, recording staff meetings, eliminating people coming forward with suggestions. It's really good, doing that, having it recorded, but sending through the agenda before the meeting, getting people to feed forward before the meeting. Like I said in the session, there were not every meeting, because sometimes you do need to have a discussion because you're a team. You have to take on board feedback from people, but you can take feedback from people digitally, for them writing it in beforehand and all that sort of stuff if you want to, if it's appropriate. That can negate the actual face-to-face conversation. And if you're having the meeting, if I think about Pete works at the Kennevay School in Jersey, and it's not a small campus. Why not make it so if your team's, one person's on one side of the school, one person's on the other side of the school, why not save that 15-minute walk from one side to the other, where you're inevitably going to bump into a whole ton of people as well? Why not just stay where you are and have the meeting in Teams, record it, save it to stream, have the agenda saved and added to directly within Word Online? It's not going to change the world, but if you do it all the time and it's done in these consistent approaches, over time you're going to save everybody so much time. And it's not sexy, it's not super duper woohoo flying to the moon VR-tastic mega ed tech, but it is really mindful, keeping learning and productivity and learning and activities that teachers have to undertake mindful all the time. And being mindful of that, you're going to save yourself loads of time and effort and heartache and all those sort of things straight away, using the tools that you've got available to you. Everything I've shared with you today won't cost you anything extra. You've already got all these things built into what it is that you're already doing. Yeah, keyboard shortcuts, absolutely vital. Teams translate. Have a look at that, Chris. I'm really sorry. Maybe I need to update my Teams or something. But I have seen it working, and it is amazing. It's not perfect, but you know what? For those people who struggle, it's better than nothing at all. And it's one of those things as well, which is only going to improve in time. When I first met Pete sort of 15 years ago or so, we were talking about things like drag and dictation. Look how things like that have moved on in that space of time. Things are only going to get better. So that's all right, Peter. I didn't share them specifically, but I keep calling you Peter, but I know it's Pete, really. I shared a few and sort of talked through them with the arrows and things like that. I'll send you a link after the fact, and I'll tag in, for everyone who's here, I'll tag in the Getter, WeAreQ, and Microsoft Edu hashtags, and it's a whole load of stuff out there. But I'll share a post with you all using those hashtags where you can find the sort of most commonly used helpful keyboard shortcuts for educators. All right, look, not a problem, Pete. I'm mindful of the time. It's an hour session. It's just gone past the hour. There's loads of stuff here. As I said, I don't do drive-by sessions, so if you want to follow up with more questions and things beyond this session, please do drop me a line at ICT Evangelist, or get in touch with me at ictevangelist.com/contact. Big thanks again to everyone for turning up today. It's been really good to have you join me, and a huge shout out and thanks again to Q and Microsoft for inviting me to come along and sort of share over the past few months as part of the Global EdTech Academy. Before I go, I am running another session tomorrow as part of the Global EdTech Academy. I'm just bringing up my schedule so I can tell you exactly what it is I'm sharing tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm doing a session on ways to sustain engagement. And we all know engagement is a poor proxy for learning, so I don't think I'm going to be doing the bells and whistles stuff now. But it's about tools to particularly engage learners in their learning. And again, it's just impactful, purposeful, evidence and research informed approaches to getting students engaging in their learning and your teaching through using digital means, which is obviously really, really important as we move through to a new academic year with use of hybrid or remote learning opportunities, which may or may not be important as we move forward into the new academic year. Same time, well, not the same place, but I'll certainly probably be in the same place. Same time tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. or 2 a.m. 10 a.m. BST or 2 a.m. PST. Go through to the Getter schedule and you can find that session there at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I'll be presenting alongside Kathy Kuznowski. She's on tomorrow. She's got office hours focusing on Microsoft tools and Flipgrid. You've also got Aaron Smith a bit later, 8 p.m. BST or midday PST, looking at accessibility, ability and dyslexia. And then a bit later on, 2:30 p.m. PST or 10:30 p.m. BST. So quite late in the evening for us here in the United Kingdom. But she's looking at jump-starting students for the new normal at school or at home tomorrow as well. And there are plenty of other sessions running today as well as part of the Global EdTech Academy. And you can find out more about those on the schedule on the Q site. I've also tweeted those things as well. Thanks so much. Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And perhaps we could have a socially distanced coffee at that Costa down by the Taunton M5 junction. Listen, thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. I've really enjoyed it. I'm so pleased you found these ideas and things useful. It's always good to get feedback from people. So thank you very much for joining me. But for now, I'm going to stop the recording and then I'm going to end the session. So stop.